Welcome to the first of our Holy Week meditations, where we'll be using some great art to help us reflect on the passages from the Gospels that depict those tumultuous last few days of Jesus' life as he comes into Jerusalem. And today we're going to start with the triumphal entry. And we're going to think a little bit about a picture painted by Hippolyte Flandrin in 1842. This picture depicts Jesus on a donkey in a very kind of static pose. It's captured a stillness about it, which is perhaps at odds to what we think about the movement of a crowd. And Jesus is on the donkey looking very magisterial, kingly, quite solemn, with a tight crowd of people all around him. But what's perhaps unusual and captures the eye is just behind Jesus, at the centre of the picture, is the donkey's foal, a little white colt, which is just behind the heel of where Jesus is sat on the donkey's mother. I'm going to read the passage from Matthew's Gospel which depicts this, but I'm going to give you a little Easter challenge. Matthew's Gospel often has two participants where the other Gospels only have one. As well as two donkeys, there are two blind men. There are two demoniacs. There are two women witnesses of the resurrection. Why does Matthew have two when the other Gospels have one? That's your research challenge for Holy Week. But let's read from the Bible. Matthew chapter 1, and I'm reading from the NIV version of the Bible. As they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage on the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent two disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you. At once you'll find a donkey tied there, with her colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, say the Lord needs them, and he will send them right away." This took place to fulfill what the prophet spoke, saying, "Say to daughter of Zion, see, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey." The disciples went and did as Jesus had instructed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and placed their cloaks for Jesus to sit on. A very large crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road too. The crowds that went ahead of him and those that followed shouted, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest." When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred and asked, "Who is this?" The crowd replied, "This is Jesus of Nazareth, the prophet from Galilee." Some scholars believe that on that day there were two processions going into Jerusalem. It was Passover. It was a time of increased nationalist fervour, a time when the city was going to be crowded with pilgrims from all over the known world. Pilate organised a procession, a military procession, with Roman soldiers in their armour, with their swords and their shields, as a display of strength, a display of power, to show who was really Lord, who was really boss of that city at a time of national fervour. Very different in tone from the entrance from the other side of the city through the Gate Beautiful of Jesus with his band of disciples and the Galilean pilgrims coming into Jerusalem, not on a war horse like a general or a conquering king, but coming on the meekest of animals, a donkey. This is Jesus, gentle Jesus, King Jesus. But Jesus, though he's gentle, is not weak. It was a tremendous act of courage to go into Jerusalem, moral, physical and spiritual courage. As Jesus entered Jerusalem, he knew he was going to a dreadful and painful death. As Jesus entered Jerusalem, he knew he was going to confront all the powers that were established in that city, both human and spiritual. But Jesus, even though he had such great matters to attend to, was always willing to welcome the lost, the least, and the most vulnerable right at the heart of what he was doing and right at the heart of his kingdom. The donkey in the centre of that picture, close to Jesus and close to his mother, represents us. Jesus always welcomed people. He welcomed the little children that the crowds wanted to keep from him. He said, the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. He blessed and affirmed a woman who was afraid to be noticed in her sickness and her ritual uncleanness, so she touched Jesus for healing. He said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. He welcomed Zacchaeus, who was not able to get near to him because he was so unpopular. He welcomed Bartimaeus, the blind man, who the crowd was trying to keep quiet, and said, bring him to me. And said to Bartimaeus, what do you want me to do for you? This is Jesus, and he welcomes us. We may feel ashamed, unworthy. We may feel that we can't draw near to Jesus. And yet actually Jesus invites us to draw near to him. And this Holy Week, let's get as close to Jesus as we can. Let's get as close to Jesus as that little vulnerable donkey with no covering and no strength is to Jesus in that painting. This Holy Week, Jesus says, I am your King. I have got good news for your soul. Come to me, you who are weary and heavy laden. I'll give you. I didn't come for the righteous. A doctor doesn't come for those who are well, but for the sick. I came for you. If you know that you need me, I'm here for you. Let's not be too proud or too ashamed to draw near to him. Let's just come just as we are and find our place close to his heart. As I finish, I'm going to read to you for this season a prayer based on the old St. Patrick's breastplate invocation for protection, translated by Mrs. C.F. Alexander. It's a prayer for protection and grace for all of us at these strange and scary times. I bind unto myself today the strong name of the Trinity, by invocation of the same, the three in one and one in three. I bind this day to me forever by power of faith, Christ's incarnation, his baptism in the Jordan River, his death on the cross for my salvation, his bursting from the spicy tomb, his riding up the heavenly way, his coming at the day of doom. I bind unto myself today.